Everything you have is built on lies! Lies!
The weirdest thing about Spider-Man's involvement within Marvel's Avengers is that the more we start learning about him, the less appealing he starts to become, which is probably the last thing any of us expected from this game. But regardless, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another very interesting Marvel's Avengers related video, diving deeper into the chaos that is currently surrounding Spider-Man within the game. Of course, at the time of this recording, it is November 24th, so we are less than 1 week away until his inclusion in the game on November 30th, which is very exciting. And recently, I did react to the overall gameplay footage that we finally saw of Spider-Man in action from the IGN exclusive hands-on preview, and break down even more information about Spider-Man's story, combat, and web-swinging abilities within the Game Informer article. However, one element of Spider-Man's main involvement in Marvel's Avengers that has a lot of people heated and extremely disappointed relating to his main narrative is, of course, his story itself. Primarily revolving around the main bombshell that all of us know at this point is that since Spider-Man is included in Marvel's Avengers in a hero event instead of a hero operation or an expansion, he will essentially have an incredibly minor role within the Marvel's Avengers narrative as a whole, and in fact, the only major piece of story content that we will actually see of Spider-Man in action is with an opening cutscene, and the rest is followed by reading and listening to audio logs and emails that do pertain to his in-game lore. And like I've already brought up in my previous videos, I do believe that this is an insanely massive disappointment, where we already knew right off the bat, if you are aware as to what type of game Marvel's Avengers is, that being a live service looter brawler, the expectations that fans had for Spider-Man's inclusion in the game should have been met rather low, considering that it is not going to be a complete standalone Spider-Man gaming experience like Insomniac's titles, and instead, Crystal is simply including Spider-Man into the base Marvel's Avengers gameplay formula. So for his gameplay, I'm personally not too upset that we are at the very least receiving sky swinging and some rather up close quarters combat with utilizing his support, assault, and his ultimate abilities to the max potential, and we're able to upgrade him as we play through him in the game overall. So I think his gameplay is fine for what it is. Based on the type of game Marvel's Avengers is, I do think Crystal did the best with what they were offered. But for his story, for the main narrative reasoning as to why Spider-Man is inputted into this Marvel's Avengers world, that is where the main logic and reasoning from Crystal Dynamics starts to completely fall through the cracks. And to actually analyze this a bit further, we do have another very interesting article coming directly from IGN, which was posted on the same day when they showcased their exclusive hands-on preview of Spider-Man, but instead, it doesn't go over his main gameplay mechanics and exactly how he will operate in-game, but rather as to why Crystal decided to not give Spider-Man as much story content in comparison to the other heroes like Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and the massive character expansion we recently received with Black Panther. And again, after reading this for myself, this is where things start to make a whole lot less sense. And as IGN goes on to describe, is that Marvel's Avengers' upcoming Spider-Man DLC will not feature story missions like those seen in the Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, and Black Panther updates. Rather than a short campaign with bespoke missions, Avengers Spider-Man with Great Power story is told through audio logs and illustrated cutscenes that are unlocked by completing challenges that have been added to the regular Avengers Initiative multiplayer missions. Working through these challenges gradually unfolds a storyline in which Spider-Man uncovers AIM's new plan to upgrade their Synthoid army. Talking to IGN, Avengers gameplay director Philippe Therian explained why Crystal Dynamics chose this direction. "We want to spend our efforts on content that everyone can enjoy, so we chose to spend a lot of our energy on the Claw Raid that's coming up at the same time. Really, that's a simple decision for us. Spider-Man can play all the content, but then we release a piece of content that's good on all platforms. Really, that was a decision that's been that way since the beginning." Now, once again, everybody, after personally reading through Philippe's overall statement, I do still fully believe that this does not make a lick of sense in any way, shape, or form. Granted, it does make obvious sense that locking a major character like Spider-Man as an exclusive hero on 1 to 2 platforms, PS4 and PS5, and not having the other players on all the other consoles not have that opportunity to play as this extremely beloved character, you obviously don't want to alienate them from any massive piece of content that could be incorporated into Spider-Man's story, similar to the Hawkeye and Kate Bishop story content missions on their own operations, did further expand the main Kree invasion that was, and still is, taking place in this live service narrative. And for Black Panther, being able to walk around Wakanda and learn more about the Wakandans that reside in it is very integral to the main Avengers campaign, which is very understandable. But we already knew way in advance, ever since the month before Marvel's Avengers launched in August of 2020, that Spider-Man was indeed going to be arriving in Marvel's Avengers as a completely exclusive character. So if they were already deciding to go that far to make Spider-Man fully locked on one platform, they should still go all the way and provide a very encapsulating tale to insert within Spider-Man's main involvement. But due to the massive amount of popularity that this particular character holds, and the fact that the majority of players did decide to purchase Marvel's Avengers on PlayStation simply for the fact that they would eventually be able to play as Spider-Man, the overall reception that he is going to receive come launch is going to be extremely underwhelming, to say the least. And the strangest part about this is that we already know that Sean Chiplock is going to be voicing Peter in his entirety, but since he has no story content for us as the player to really dive into, we're really only going to hear Sean through battle grunts and also some certain character interactions while talking in the elevator, while going in certain levels, and also hearing him through audio logs and reading text. I don't know about you guys, but it must feel very perplexing for Sean as a voice actor to voice this incredibly beloved character in minuscule ways in comparison to the major campaigns that we did receive for each of the other individual heroes. And furthermore, we also know full well that Spider-Man was completely delayed within the Marvel's Avengers launch schedule. In fact, he was supposed to initially release within the game earlier this year in March of 2021, but instead they had to delay him in order to try and further work on the other hero operations like Kate Bishop, Clint Barton, and then do the massive overhaul with the Black Panther War for Wakanda expansion. So seeing Phil say that they had to focus all their resources onto making this Claw Raid the most impactful piece of content that is going to release on November 30th, when we already knew way in advance that they were working on Spider-Man well before this Claw Raid even existed, does not add up in the slightest. So in the end, everybody, I do think that including Spider-Man within Marvel's Avengers was always going to go poorly, with it being a completely PlayStation exclusive character, but I do think it would have been in Crystal and Square's best interest if they were to make the most of the Spider-Man deal that a majority of players were extremely looking forward to. And now, after having seen his gameplay and hearing exactly what IGN and some other gaming outlets had to say about him, it is very divided, to say the least. But with all that said, everyone, that's the video that I have for you today, and let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think about Spider-Man's inclusion within Marvel's Avengers, especially with the lack of story content that he will have, and do you personally believe the main reasoning that Philippe Therian did provide about not necessarily focusing too much on Spider-Man's story because they wanted to focus on the Claw Raid instead? Again, I personally don't believe him one bit, considering that we already knew that Spider-Man was in development way before the Claw Raid was even a thing, so I wouldn't take any of his statements at face value, but I am still hoping that Spider-Man will at the very least be entertaining enough. And with all that said, everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy, and for more Marvel's Avengers and Spider-Man videos like this in the future. And without further ado, peace out.